Nobody tells you how fast your life can come crashing down around you. Nobody ever mentions that you can expect one of the most joyful days of your life and have it end as the worst day on earth. It's been 1 year since that happened to me, and I fully expect the downhill tumble to continue for the rest of my life. We looked forward to this day for 9 months. Finding out Lori was pregnant was one of the best things to ever happen to us. We were young, not quite ready to be parents, maybe, but was anybody ever really ready for that? Bringing a kid into the world is never an easy thing, but we were determined to give our child the life that neither of us had. One where they were loved unconditionally and kept safe from the evils of the world. And getting to the hospital that day was a blur, but both of us were over the moon that the time was finally here. There was nothing that we looked forward to more than meeting our daughter, our little Josephine. Labor lasted about 5 hours, Lori giving it her all to push and bring our baby into this world. When she was born, something was wrong immediately. The doctors were scrambling, mentioning something about the umbilical cord getting wrapped around her neck as she came out. They didn't give us a moment with her, instead setting her on another table and immediately beginning to perform whatever life-saving procedures they could as we looked on in horror. After a minute of watching, though, the monitors attached to Lori began to beep. The nurse attending to her realized that she was still bleeding, losing too much and too quick. The next few minutes were, well, they were a whirlwind. Everything went crazy so fast, and within an hour, my wife and daughter were both gone. I had to walk out into the waiting room where both of our parents were expecting good news. I think my mom realized as soon as she saw me that something was off, running to hug me and setting me down in a nearby chair before I collapsed. Tears wouldn't even flow, just empty, numb feelings that were hollowing out my chest as I told them what had happened. Lori's mom broke down first, letting out pained gasps as she screamed for her daughter. My mom could only hold me as the tears eventually began to flow. I got to hold my daughter for a few minutes, her cold body pressed to my chest as I told her how much I loved her, and that her mother would be there to take care of her, wherever they may be. The hospital doctors met with me, told me that they were so sorry for my losses, but I couldn't even comprehend. The most that I could do was hold little Josephine close and kiss her forehead, begging God to somehow bring them back. He didn't answer. The next days and weeks blurred into each other. Work gave me time off for the first few days, although they refused to honor my paternity leave due to the complications surrounding the birth. Apparently, you only get time off if you get a healthy baby, not if you have to grieve the child that you've lost. Stress was only compounded by the hospital sending a bill a few days later for nearly $500,000. I nearly offed myself then and there reading it, seeing a line item charge for after birth skin to skin that was listed at nearly $5,000 alone. To think holding what was my own child would cost $5,000 nearly broke my brain in grief. They were monetizing my own traumatic loss for their own gain, and the insurance companies apparently refused to cover it since again, it wasn't an actual healthy birth. They told me to just take it up with the hospital, like they would do anything. All of that was a year ago. I started drinking. I don't know exactly when, but it helped to numb the pain that I was feeling. Work asked me to come back, and I ended up telling them to go screw themselves. We had a decent little nest egg of savings that we had built up, expecting most of it to go towards Josephine after she was born. Instead, it went towards booze. I spent the year as a ghost, drunk for days at a time on benders, sitting in the nursery that we had painted together, the crib that would never be slept in, boxes of diapers sitting unused, cans of formula that wouldn't be eaten. This house was like a mausoleum to the family that I had lost, and I was determined to make it my grave as well. I don't know what woke me from my drunken sleep at first, the house shaking or my phone blaring a loud and high-pitched alert. I was passed out in the nursery rocking chair, phone on the floor beside me and an empty bottle in my lap. Acid was coming up from my stomach, head pounding as the last of the alcohol was leaving me behind with just a hangover. At first, I thought it was just the withdrawal that was making everything appear to shake, but then the sound of the crib rattling against the wall told me something else was going on. The phone kept droning, loud and shrill, sawing into my skull and making it pound even worse as I desperately leaned over to grab it. Emergency alert. Seismic activity reported. Seek shelter immediately and await further notices. Earthquakes in South Georgia. What's going on? Wiping my eyes, I tried getting up but nearly stumbled over my own unsteady feet as the ground rushed up to meet me. The entire house shaking didn't do me any favors either. Desperately clambering on all fours, I tried to stand, hoping to get my balance by grabbing onto the empty crib. Finally, I was able to make my way over to the window, yanking open the blinds. Overcast skies met me, nearly blinding despite all the clouds covering the sun. The rest of the neighborhood was still being shaken, though it seemed to happen in a rhythm as opposed to a constant tremor running through the land. Whatever it was causing an immense amount of damage already. The roads were cracking, and from the looks of the neighbor's house, there was already structural damage. Homes here were built for hurricanes, not earthquakes, and just a small one was going to be enough to screw a lot of us over. Over the distance in the direction of the coast, smoke was billowing into the air. That definitely wasn't good. Likely some of the tourist shops at the waterfront or worse, the downtown area. Everything down there was crowded together, and a fire in one of the shops would probably take half of them down if somebody didn't respond in time. Suddenly, the smoke started rising further, curling into the sky and going higher and higher until it looked over everything in the distance. As it finally stopped rising, the darkness began to swirl, almost like it was a snake coiling and ready to strike. I swear that it was writhing, moving, and pulsating as more smoke from the ground had joined it. Suddenly, though, the smoke stopped rising from the ground, the last of it joining the swirl in the sky. Suddenly, the alert came again on my phone, shrill and cutting through the sounds of still air and deafening silence. I fumbled for a moment, grabbing my phone to view the nearest message. Emergency alert. Strange phenomena is being reported over your area. Stay indoors, find shelter. Do not walk in open areas. Weird. I looked up from my phone, gazing back outside, and noticed that some of the smoke from the giant cloud was now falling in trails towards the ground. Sporadically, but there were probably hundreds beginning to reach out from the massive dark, rolling smoke, like it was trying to return to the ground. My head was still pounding, butting its way back to the front of my mind, away from the strange smoke high in the sky. I need to grab a drink to get the pounding to stop. Need to calm my shaking hands. I walked into the kitchen, grabbing my first drink of the morning before heading into the living room and flipping on the television. An emergency broadcast was on, showing the worried face of two news anchors. Authorities are advising that you remain indoors as the smoke is yet to be determined as hazardous or not. As we learn more, we'll bring you the latest details. The female anchor was saying. Yes, if you're just tuning in, there has been an earthquake through the coastal area. After the earthquake, which registered as a 5.6 magnitude, strange smoke from an unknown location began to rise into the sky. Nobody can quite pinpoint where it came from, but it's now hanging over the city. A male anchor said this time. As he spoke, the female anchor put a hand to her ear, listening intently to somebody speaking from the studio. "This just in," she stammered, looking more terrified than before. "We have word that the smoke is hostile. It seems to be picking up those it sees on the ground and taking them. We're not sure how it does it, but reports of citizens being taken are coming in. This comes on top of the mysterious disappearances that have been reported this morning, with many insisting that they saw people suddenly vanish into thin air. These disappearances are still being investigated by the authorities, but they have said that everyone should remain indoors." The heck? I went to the window, looking out once more at the massive smoke that now looked like dark black clouds in the sky. Sure enough, the tendrils were extending further down to the ground, and as more reached out, some were coming back. My eyesight, as good as it was, felt tricked. The ones returning had masses on the end, limp as they were pulled even higher into the sky. People. "Please, for your safety, stay in your homes. We don't know how long it will take for this to pass, but authorities are pleading that citizens try to stay safe. Hide in a basement or an interior room if available, away from windows. Do not go outside for any reason." My brain wasn't really comprehending what was going on. Not like I had plans to go out today anyway. But well, this was just odd. Nothing made sense. For a while, I just stood at the window wondering if I was actually still asleep in the rocking chair. Maybe I had choked in my sleep and this was some kind of purgatory, or I made it straight to hell. Wouldn't be surprised if my luck tumbled out that way. Lose everything you've got in life, descend into a spiral of depression where you would rather die than be alive, and then end up in hell. That's, well, if it's worse than the life I was living, remains to be seen. I grabbed another couple of drinks and I hid in the bathroom. Figure if worse comes to worse, I kill this headache and pass the time. Maybe pass out myself and wake up to this all being over. I'll keep an eye on my phone just in case anything else develops, but I've got my plans for the day now. Moving into the bathroom, I settled into the dry tub, laying down on the cool porcelain and letting out a sigh of relief. It was hot out and the inside temperature was quickly catching up, so any bit of cool felt nice on the skin. Cracking open the beer in my hand, I set the other one down on the floor beside the tub, opening my phone to check the news. There was surprisingly little available. Just the same emergency alert about staying indoors, but no mention of the tendrils coming off the thing. No mention of people being snatched off the streets. Just inclement weather and a recommendation to seek shelter until it passes. Odd, but maybe it just hadn't caught up to the reality of the situation yet. There wasn't much else to do, so I eventually opened up a game and kept drinking. A couple of hours passed. I'm finally sufficiently toasted and the headache is gone. My phone was starting to die though, so it was time to leave the safety of my bathtub. Oh, getting up was rough, and my back apparently didn't take kindly to the hard tub surface and sleeping in the rocking chair the night before. Everything was creaky, joints popping as I left the room and opened the door. A baby's crying reached me faintly when I had opened it. Freezing in my tracks, I looked around, wondering where that could be coming from. None of my neighbors had a kid, at least that I was aware of, but it sounded closer than that. The crying got louder and as I walked towards the front of the house, looking carefully around to make sure that nothing was in the house with me. Stopping by the front window, I could finally see where the crying was coming from. There was a baby's bassinet sitting on the sidewalk outside, crying coming from inside of it. Next to it was a woman, dark auburn hair billowing around her face as the wind whipped the hospital gown that she was wearing. "Lori?" I whispered, unsure what I was seeing. That hair, the body, that was my wife out there, standing on the sidewalk in front of our house. Our baby likely laying in the bassinet right next to her. I couldn't see her face, but I knew that it had to be her. God, to see her again. I froze in place for a minute, unsure of what to do. Maybe I really was dead, or stuck in hell. But God, if this was hell, then it was beautiful. They were so close, all I had to do was go outside. And that was around the time I started noticing the people lined up in front of the other houses on the block. At least every other house had somebody in front of it, just standing there. None of their faces were visible, almost like they were blurred out, like on television when somebody needs their identity protected. Still though, it was odd seeing everybody just waiting patiently. As I watched, Paula, the elderly woman who lives across the road, began to walk out. The person standing in front of her home wasn't someone that I recognized. He was young with a full head of dark black hair, slicked back and clean cut, wearing dress blues from the military. A couple of medals were shining on his chest as he slowly stepped out onto the porch, shouting something that I couldn't quite hear. To be honest, the baby's crying was still going, making it hard to focus on anything else. Paula walked closer to the man on the sidewalk, holding up a hand towards him as she approached. I could see her lips moving, tears forming in her eyes as she talked to the man on the sidewalk. He made no move to respond, but I could see that something else was starting to happen. As she approached, something about the man began to change. He was stretching, becoming a distorted version of the man there only moments before, as a thin black tendril began to widen over him. Paula got closer as the man opened his arms wide, welcoming her into his open arms like a long-lost friend. My phone was going off again, another alert. I looked away from Paula and the scene unfolding outside for a moment to pull the phone from my pocket and glanced at the screen. Emergency alert to all survivors. Do not interact with the dead. Oh no, I have to warn her. I have to give her a signal to run. As I looked up though, it was already too late. Paula staggered into the man's embrace, putting her own arms around him, only for the man to suddenly poof into smoke. The cloud suddenly enveloped her, a tendril wrapping around Paula's body and squeezing tight. I swear that I could almost see her eyes pop out of her head as it began to lift her from the ground, pulling her up into the sky rapidly towards the main mass of smoke. She tried to scream, but the last of the air in her lungs was quickly squeezed out as the tendril gripped tighter. After a moment, she was gone, absorbed into the black cloud above as it churned and grew. I dropped down below the window, hiding from the screaming baby and terrifying visage of my wife, standing just a few feet from the front door. When they moved, I don't know, but they were now at least halfway up the walkway to the house, reaching ever closer to the front door. Good God, could they come inside? If the smoke was able to lift a fully grown woman into the air with such ease, then opening a door probably wouldn't be too far out of the realm of possibility. Before I knew what I was doing, there were chairs and a desk piled in front of the door, a makeshift barricade to keep them from getting through to me. I was nearly breathless by the time that I finished getting it all in place, and God knows if I would actually be able to stop them from getting through if that thing really put its mind to it. But it was worth a shot, right? My phone started ringing. Lori's mom. Talk about bad timing for my mother-in-law to call when her dead daughter is walking towards my door to yank me into the sky. Mel, you okay? I asked upon answering. I could hear Melanie on the other line crying, loud sobs that were nearly hysterical.
Oh, Harrison, I'm okay. Are you? Are you safe?
She was asking through labored breaths. Whatever was happening over there, she wasn't taking it very well.
Lori's here.
Every hair in my body stood up like I had touched a live wire. Yeah, she's here too, I muttered, unsure of what else to say. It's not her, Mel, you know that.
No, she can't be. Her and Josephine are right at the front door. They say they're sorry that they were gone for so long.
She replied, the sobbing turning from fear to something like bewilderment.
Oh, poor Josephine has to be sweating out there in this heat. I think I'm going to let them in.
No! I nearly screamed into the phone. Mel, that's not Lori and it's not Josephine either. You can't let them in.
Don't you dare tell me not to let my own daughter in.
Her voice turned cold.
She would still be here if it wasn't for you.
That was kind of the breaking point for me. There's no more to say after that. I hung up the phone. If she lets them in, well, then that's on her. Can't say that it isn't having an effect on me though. Over the past year, I've asked myself all kinds of questions about if I could have done something different. What if my genes had caused what had happened to Josephine? Did I indirectly contribute to my wife's death? God, is it really my fault that I'm left here alone, with nothing but their ghosts made of smoke outside to taunt me? Maybe it is better if I just walk outside right now and let that thing take me. It's not like I haven't been living for the past year anyway, drinking myself to death, cowardly hoping that the alcohol would kill me since I was too much of a baby to do it myself. Now the only two people that I've ever loved more than myself were basically welcoming me into death outside my front door, and I was still too scared to take them up on that offer. I'm spiraling. Josephine won't stop screaming outside, and I swear to God that I can hear Lori's voice calling for me, asking me to let her in. It's time to feed the baby, Harry, she was saying through the door. She must have been right up next to it now, ready to come in as soon as there was the slightest hint of an opening. Oh, she's so hungry. Everything in me was screaming, torn between opening the door and embracing this thing that was pretending to be my dead wife, or trying for a desperate run out the back door. I probably wouldn't get too far considering the thing up there was picking people up off the streets as soon as it saw them. But what other choice is there? The car. Maybe it wasn't the best idea, but it was enough to get me out of this house and away from these ghosts of my dead family. Heck, if that thing wants to swoop down and take in the air while I'm driving, then at least I had a good run, I guess. This was it though. I can't stay here any longer. I gotta find my keys first. Where the heck could they be? Let's see. When I last went out, I probably put them on the table in the living room. I scoured there, but no luck. Otherwise, crap. They were hanging right there by the front door, now blocked off by my improvised barricade of furniture. I was going to have to move some of it before I could even think about reaching the things. Meanwhile, Lori was still outside calling to me. Harry, please, it's hot out here. Josephine's hungry, I'm hungry. Please let us in. She was droning on. It was definitely her voice, but something was off. She had always been more of a bright talker, joy in every sentence. The kind of person that lights up a conversation with positivity, even when you're talking about the most mundane things on earth. But instead, her voice was flat now, with no sign of that joy anywhere to be found. Hollow, empty words floating through the door to entice me out as our child cried right beside her. In a way, Josephine crying kind of helped me keep my composure at this point. Lori was one of the most determined people when it came to being a mom, and that drive to be the best was something that she was constantly showing before our daughter was ever born. No way she would just be standing there while our girl was crying right beside her, doing nothing to try and console the angry child. I noticed a faint sound of the doorknob being moved, realizing that she was probably trying to turn it from the outside. Thank God, I thought to lock the door and deadbolt it first. Slowly, trying not to make any noise that would betray what I was doing, I began to move the barricade bit by bit, hoping to clear just enough for me to reach my keys. From the nearby window, I could see the smoke in the sky now stretching out to cover miles and miles of open air, billowing even darker than it was before. Was it gaining strength from feeding on people? And God help us if it decided to change after it was finally full. The thing seemed nigh unstoppable as it is. I can't imagine what it would be like after it actually had some energy in it. My blood ran cold as I pulled the third chair from the pile, ever so slowly, and the remaining two suddenly shifted. They fell with a crash, one hitting me directly in the shin as it came down. I hopped back, holding my leg and trying not to curse out loud as I laid eyes on what was happening in front of me. A thin, barely visible strand of smoke was coming in through the crack under the door, extending itself into the locking mechanism and jiggling it around. As the chairs fell, the deadbolt slid open. Crap, I muttered, letting go of my now aching leg and starting to panic. I threw myself over the remaining chairs, clawing at the keys on their hanger. They came off, clattering to the floor before sliding under the desk as I dove after them. The door began to open. "Oh, Harry." Laurie's voice came through the small crack in the door. More of the humanity was leaving it bit by bit. There was something underneath her voice, guttural and ancient. It sounded pained, like an elderly person with lung cancer struggling to speak on their deathbed. "Oh, she's waited so long to meet you." Josephine's crying grew louder as the smoke began to creep through the opening in the doorway. I fumbled under the desk, desperately feeling for the keys even as they evaded my grasp. My hand finally slammed down on them, almost stabbing through my palm with the amount of force that I had behind it. As the door was forced open the rest of the way, I stood, backing away down the front hall as my wife stepped into our home for the first time since she had passed. The smell of death and burning flesh was overbearing as she came in, permeating the air in a thick blanket the moment that she had entered the room. Everything around her seemed to get darker, all the lights in the house barely doing anything to illuminate her figure. It was the exact opposite of how she lit up a room when she was alive. Instead, draining the light from every corner as if she could only survive in the darkness. As she got closer to me, I could finally see why she would want to keep it dark. Our baby was in her arms, but this wasn't the woman that I had married. Her face wasn't there. Instead, a charred, still smoldering slate of dark ashes stared me down, twin embers where her eyes should be. I almost felt the heat on my skin as she looked at me, burning into me with her gaze of fire. "I've missed you," she whispered, the voice becoming more guttural, less like her as she dropped the baby. Whatever was supposed to be Josephine poofed as it hit the ground, the smoke quickly making a move towards me as I continued stepping backwards. That was my cue to get the heck away from there, darting off into the kitchen and towards the garage door into the waiting car. I nearly tore the car door off just trying to open it. I could see her slowly making her way towards the garage door and through the kitchen, not taking steps to reach closer to me but gliding along the floor, like the ghost that had been haunting me since she had died. My wife was coming for me, and months ago, I probably would have gladly thrown myself into her embrace, despite the smell of flames and death she brought with her. Now, though, all I could think was that I wanted to get the heck out of here, get away from this tomb of a house and away from whatever was watching us from the sky, desperate to devour me whole along with the rest of the town. That wasn't Laurie. Laurie was dead, and I've known that for months now. I've accepted that. This is some kind of demon. The garage door slid up slowly as I started the car, looking back every couple of seconds to the doorway and seeing her getting ever closer. The mechanical door barely got halfway up before I decided that that was enough, throwing the car into drive and punching the pedal through the floorboard. The car tires squealed as they hit pavement, and I could hear the metal door scraping against the roof above me, making my ears almost retreat into my head from the awful screeching. But I finally made it out. Turning the wheel sharp, I got onto the road just as Lori appeared in the rearview, floating along much faster in her attempt to catch me. Too late though, I was off. Despite being in a more residential neighborhood, I didn't let off the gas. Not like there were any kids playing outside right now to be wary of or anything. No, I floored it, and going almost 70 through the winding curves as I made my way towards the highway. If anything, I could get out of town and far away from whatever this was. Looking up in the sky almost immediately killed that idea for me though. Whatever was up there was changing, molding into a different shape as the smoke rolled and billowed around in the wind. More and more tendrils were extending down, and I swear it looked like the main mass was moving closer to the ground as I went. Before long, I was out of the neighborhood and onto the main highway going through town. It was mostly empty, though the occasional abandoned car was scattered on and off the road like their drivers had been taken out of the car while they were speeding along. The sky continued to grow darker, reminding me of the dozens of hurricanes that had come and gone while I had lived here. Except, this was still eerie, with no light rain beginning to fall as the storm moved in. Instead, the clouds settled ever closer to the ground, beginning to obscure the distance like a thick black fog covering everything like a blanket. I could smell rot and ash as it got thicker, nearly swallowing up the car. The engine sputtered and died within moments of being surrounded by smoke. Everything gave out, and instead of coasting to a stop, I felt the car suddenly jerk to a halt, like it was being grabbed. I gotta get out. Gotta find shelter somewhere, but where? The smoke was getting thicker and I almost choked on the smell of sulfur that was permeating the air now along with it. Opening my door, I rolled out onto the road, trying to keep low and do my best to stay away from the thick smog covering everything. I felt the earth tremble again for a brief moment before a shockwave suddenly hit, air blasting the car behind me through empty space and into a tree on the opposite side of the road. I reached out, grabbing onto a sewer grate on the curb nearby, holding on for dear life as the smoke swirled, now mixing with dust and debris as something made impact with the earth. The next thing I know, I'm flying right alongside the debris, being tossed away from the road. I hit a tree and I heard something inside me snap. I'm not sure how long it's been. My ears are ringing and I can't see straight. Trees are snapped off at the base right near me. It hurts to pick my head up and look around. The ground is above me. No way, I'm upside down. What am I hanging on to? Looking down, I see it. A tree branch impaling me right through my stomach on the right side. It's not very thick, but enough that pulling it out is going to be extremely painful. I've got to move though. Wait, where's the smoke? The sky isn't dark black anymore, but a deep red. There's no sign of the smoke anywhere. Nowhere around me is even hazy. Did it all get blown away in the blast? What made that in the first place? Did they try to nuke it maybe? No, there would have been a flash before everything happened. As it is, looking around me, there didn't seem to be any mushroom cloud or anything that would designate signs of warfare. Maybe it left on its own. The earth shook again, making me scream in pain as the tree that I was impaled on shook as well. God, what could be causing it? I can barely look around. Anytime I stretch my head, the wound in my chest screams in pain. I don't think I can pull this out without bleeding out on the ground below me, if I even make it that far before dying. Jesus, Lori, I might see you soon. The roar rings out again with another massive tremor following. The branch creaks under my weight, threatening to give out and send me careening to the ground. I try to wiggle, seeing if I can get off of it bit by bit. The ground is probably 5 feet below me. Not that far, but far enough that it's going to hurt. Inch by inch, I wiggle, screaming in pain the entire time, gritting my teeth to the point where I hear a molar crack and to feel a couple of pops in my jaw. Every agonizing second of it brings me closer to falling through empty space and landing on the bare dirt below. The tremors continue, rhythmically moving like footsteps, one after the other. I'm almost there. Maybe 3 more inches of the branch between me and freedom. I don't know what's going to await me after my fall, though, so this last heave could very well be it. It's strange. Before I make the final push, I swear that I can see somebody walking in the distance, coming my way. Maybe they were caught up in the shockwave too. Maybe they'll be able to even help me get out of here. God knows that I'm going to have to crawl. I mean, which way do I even go? The next tremor and my repositioning are too much for the branch to handle. I feel a snap as it breaks under me, interrupting my thoughts. For a brief moment, I feel relief as all my own weight is no longer working against gravity inside the wound. Instead, it's replaced with more pain a second later as I land, forcing the rest of the branch through as it makes contact with the ground, pushing it right back in the same direction that I tried to wiggle out from, and doing untold damage as I'm left shrieking in pain on the ground. Everything goes white as the pain takes over, blinding me while I look up at the red sky. It's the same color as my blood, soaking the end of the broken limb, now protruding into the sky above me. My screams are immediately drowned out by another roar as I look on, finally seeing what the source of the tremors and noise is. It was behind me when I was on the tree, unable to look around without feeling the screaming agony, but I almost wish that I was still up there after witnessing what was about to be the end of me. Towering into the sky, hundreds of thousands of meters to the point where it would break the cloud cover if there was any, was a beast. It stood on 4 legs, each as thick as 4 skyscrapers smashed together, and just as tall. Large, chunky scales worked their way up the ashen skin, with thick lines of glowing molten red showing where the gaps were between them. The torso was sturdy with more of the scales piling on it, each layering on top of each other to cover its huge chest. The head, though, it was human, at least the approximation of a human. Its face was blank and nearly featureless, but the eyes, nose, and mouth were right there without any sort of hair to make them differentiate. The eyes were massive themselves, just gazing blankly at the ground, surrounded by those same ashen scales. As it took more steps and turned, though, I could see its back towering into the sky as it began to rear up. More and more faces, each a different size, some massive and some so small that I could barely make them out, covered its back from top to bottom. Each one looked like someone else, but all had the same face of agony and pain, all screaming silently to the sky above to be put out of their misery. The beast roared again as it came crashing down, feet landing hard and sending another shockwave in every possible direction. I winced, preparing for it to hit me as I could see it coming fast, brushing through trees and kicking up dust as it roared closer. In the distance, the person I saw earlier was even closer, though, and the wave of violence passed through them without knocking them down. All I could do was lay there and take the beating as it hit me, pelting me with loose debris and rocks as it passed. Dust filled my lungs, making me cough and sputter just trying to take a breath. When I looked up again, the figure was right there, Lori holding our daughter in her arms. This time it wasn't some terrifying abomination made of smoke, though. It was actually her. God, she was glowing like the day she told me that she was pregnant. a huge smile on her face, lighting up my world against the backdrop of the crimson sky. She reached a hand out, her smile growing bigger as she looked into my eyes, and the beast roared again. I took her hand and immediately the pain faded away. Warmth enveloped my body, leaving me in peace, unfeeling of the agony that had been there just moments before, overwhelming every one of my senses. She pulled me from the ground effortlessly, enveloping me in a hug as we floated away. I didn't even notice it until I looked down to see the ground quickly fading beneath us, the great beast becoming smaller and smaller as we soared past it, far out of its reach, the crimson sky welcoming us as it turned to a bright, jovial blue. Our baby laughed in her arms, bringing me warmth. I don't know if this is the delusion of a dying man or if I'm really going to heaven, but I'm going to embrace it. I'm finally where I belong, not in pain, not in suffering, but at peace.